says that she loves me. Isn't it lovely when the one you loving is the one you're loving?
I was telling you in the break, you can feel transformations happen in your life, right?
Yes.
And you either run from them or you welcome them. I've spent most of my life doing both. But I'm welcoming this, whatever it brings, because that's part of the obedience.
That's right.
But I had a moment this weekend watching CBS Sunday Morning. So they had the Kareem Abdul-Jabbar segment, which was great, and then they had Zoe Saldana, and I was not going to watch it. Saldana, let me give her nya on the end, because I was like, Nina Simone,
Right.
But the commercial came on, and I was like, all right, let me just lean in, and I left that interview convicting myself for judging this woman, for not giving her the grace of not knowing. Because I might have been one of the people, you definitely on social media where all of the cowards live, joining in the reindeer games of the excoriation of this woman without thinking about her humanity. And I chastised myself in the moment. And I also said, I got to do better across the board in terms of giving grace to people when they're wrong, right? She was absolutely wrong in taking that role, but the wrongness didn't come out of intent. It came out of a sense of love and honor, and she didn't know what she didn't know, right? So she's out now, and why I leaned in, because, they're talking about Hollywood, and Zoe Saldana is the only actor to be in the top 3 grossing movies of all time. Wow. So she's in the 2 Avatars, and then she's in the Galaxy, one of the Avengers, the Guardian of the Galaxy, the Avengers. What is it, Guardian? But she's in the Avengers one, playing the character from Guardian of the Galaxy. The top 3 grossing films all have Zoe Saldana in it. So I'm like, there must be something about her, though, because that kind of grace also is something powerful about this woman for her to be in. Now, granted, she's blue in one and green in the other 2, right? Or blue in 2 and green in the other. So she doesn't look like herself. But even that she talks about in this interview. As a Black woman, she says, Hollywood always told her she wasn't right. They were going for a more traditional look, or a more traditional character. So her being able to play CGI inspired, to play blue women and green women as aliens, gave her the career. And she said also the anonymity, because she can raise her children. Basically, she said some people recognize her, but she can go to the grocery store, go to the park. She can play with her kids. Her kids are with her all the time. She's raising a family, and she's a superstar.
Right.
But her face isn't readily, recognizable. I love Zoe Saldana in Colombiana, which I think is one of the top 5 baddest action film, period.
Wow.
Like, argue with me if you want to. I got receipts. It's when the little girl, what's her name? Amanda Stenberg played her as a young girl, and she ran into the sewer. Man, I was like, I was in. But then the action of that, she's great. So the one blip that she had was playing Nina Simone. I feel like, and then people came for her because I think somebody interpreted her as saying she wasn't Black.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe 20-something-year-old Zoe Saldana was told that she wasn't Black, because I know a lot of Dominicans and Puerto Ricans that check white on the census. Because in their household, proximity to Blackness is not success. You can't bring Puffy home. You must marry Ben Affleck, because that's a reflection of what we want, which is to whiten ourselves so that we can fit into the social structure, right? So do we excoriate somebody for what they've been taught? Or do we give them the grace to learn? And she learned. So I want to play a clip from her. And then I also want to play a clip from Neil deGrasse Tyson, because I want your opinion on that too, because I think it kind of fits into this same thing. But she was on CBS Sunday Morning, and she talked about portraying Nina Simone. Play that.
I should have never accepted the part. I am Black. Nobody will ever tell me how to be Black. But as a person of Afro, Latino, and African heritage, I have to understand just how complex this conversation needs to be in order for me to propel accurate portrayals of women of color.
I read through interviews earlier on where you were supporting the decision to portray her. It seems that you were thinking on this really evolved through the controversy?
Yes, I was being attacked so aggressively, and my instinct was to protect myself. It's very frightening when you're bullied to the extent that I was. Also, I grew up listening to her, and I felt that she did sing to me. Because if I don't fit in that world, what other world was I going to fit in? Definitely not the white world. So it was very isolating and very painful and scary. And then growth comes from that.
Why do you think it touches you so much all these years later?
Because I love Nina Simone still. I would love to be able to listen to her music.
You stopped listening. Why?
So I felt I heard her.
Y'all, we did a thing to this woman. Owe her an apology.
Absolutely.
Dr. Daniel Black, I felt all of the pain of all of the hate mail and the death threats and everybody just so mean and cruel to somebody that made a decision. Yes, she put on prosthetics and darkened her skin. Don't think she did it to be hateful. And even if she hated herself, how much grace do you give to somebody who hates themselves? We had this conversation about Clarence Thomas a few weeks ago.
Right.
Like,
and see, here's the problem. We are confusing as a country and as a culture. We're confusing wrong with short-sighted. In this case, Zoe Saldana was short-sighted. She wasn't wrong because she's a Black woman. And the notion that a Black woman wanted to play a Black woman and wanted to honor her in that way is not wrong. She was short-sighted in terms of the choice of who aesthetically might best represent Nina Simone. But see, that's a color issue, if you will. That's not a soul issue. That's not a spirit issue. And too often we confuse these two. To be wrong is for when a person already has learned the lesson and does not choose its application. To be short-sighted is when one has not learned the lesson and makes poor choices in the process, which we all do daily. We're all short-sighted at times, and we get grace for being short-sighted as you learn. It's like when a child comes home and they color outside the lines, you don't get a whooping for that. You don't get a whooping for that. Not in the second grade. Now, by the time you get to the fifth grade, you might get a different reprimand. Right? But I'm saying the second grader gets grace because they're learning the process of coloring. And it's funny, coloring, I mean, I'm a pun there, right? And intended and unintended, right? But I think the thing here that's so important is you've got to give people grace in process. In America, we want people to already have the lesson when they start the process. And not only is it not true, but it makes us tiptoe. It makes us tiptoe, Karen Hunter, it makes us tiptoe so fearfully through the process that we really can't even do it well, and we can't do it thoroughly because we're too afraid to mess up. We're too afraid to error. People who can sing well, no, I can't sing. What if I hit the wrong note? Do you know how many wrong notes Patty has hit in her life? What?
As it relates to race, in that part, yes. There's so many people not living out their gift for fear that somebody is going to criticize them. And I tell my students, there's nothing. Perfection is a process, is what I tell the people I work with. You know, we're going to not be perfect. We're going to process our way into perfection. It's through the earnest doing and intent to get it right that perfection evolves, and it's collective. We all participate in this thing called perfection. It's not one singular thing that you do that makes it perfect. But as I'm listening to her, there's the different things, right? There's a difference between hiding your lamp under the bed, right? You know, that analogy of having a gift and not using it for fear that somebody's going to criticize you, and what has been done to Zoe Saldana, what has been done to Sammy Sosa, which I also participated in. And as you're talking, I just came to this revelation. So thank you, that I think we beat the hell out of people like Sammy Sosa, who obviously is going through something, right? For him to take that level of bleaching of his skin, the level of self-hatred
That's
that
right.
then you pile on, but we
That's
do
right.
it because what we're saying to the world is, he doesn't, how dare he deny his blackness, because we're saying something to white people, right? In that moment.
That's right.
We're letting them know that we're black and we're proud, and he doesn't represent. So we're going to beat the hell out of him.
That's right.
So that they know.
That's right.
And so that everybody else knows this is unacceptable. It's
That's
unacceptable to not accept yourself. But the reality is, I think there's also kind of there's a revelation with us as well. Like if
right.
we can have that level of anger and ire towards somebody that you don't know,
That's right.
for doing something that you think defiles all of us, as opposed to it being a short-sighted or worse, hurt, pain that they're experiencing themselves that's manifesting in skin bleaching or whatever, right? We have to do better, right, Dr. Black?
And the truth of the matter is, it's funny you said self-hatred, because it's manifested self-hatred, but in a really, really sinister kind of way. For example, one of my students, this is maybe a semester or two ago, walked in the class, new class, and he was like, and I finished the lecture, and he said, "Hey, yo, my nigga, that lecture was hot." And he was talking to me. And I said, "Well, brother, I want to first tell you how much I love you and how much I appreciate you in my class. And would you mind if I were something greater to you than a nigga? Would you mind? I would rather be something greater." In other words, hey, it depends on the assumption you make about other people before you see their perfecting. Can I be holy in these flaws? See, if not, then really, what's funny is, as you're arguing not to use the N word, your reaction is nigga-ish. See, if you're not careful, you're actually performing the ugliness you're thinking the word is doing, and you think you're rejecting. In other words, can you assume me divine as I'm in process? See, the part of the problem in America is we want product, not process. We want product. And unless we get product, in fact, we need to throw the word perfection away, not perfection, perfecting. I am perfecting, which means I am always about the process of learning more and getting better, right? See, when I put that on it, that means that there is constant movement, and I'm inviting you to walk with me. Perfection says, leave me alone. I have already arrived.
Yes. Tony in the Nubia chat says, why do I equate Zoe Saldana's tears to white women's tears? I think it's because she has light skin privilege, and it makes it hard for me to relate to her struggles. I will need to work on that within myself. Indeed. Yeah. I mean, yeah, because you're like, she has everything. Why is she crying? Oh, and it's weird how we can pile on somebody. And she's clearly, I mean, if you watch it, she's been through it. And I know we put her through it. I watched it. We still putting her every time you mention her name, it's the Nina Simone thing. And then it can start up all over again like it was yesterday. And that's forced her into isolation. It has to be incredibly lonely. It has to be incredibly hurtful to not be accepted by Black people. And, whether you think you're Black or not, the world thinks you're Black. She knows she's been in them Hollywood spaces where she was too Black to be something.
That's right. And she's also suffering from what I call melanated abuse. And that is when Black people don't find you Black enough for our applause.
As she's in the top 3 grossing movies and constantly working, clearly, so as it relates to that, on another level, I don't put Neil deGrasse Tyson in the same category because I think he knows better. And I think he's playing a different game. And I think I put him more on the side of Clarence Thomas, where at some point, to a lesser degree, Clarence is operating out of his revenge,
right,
Whereas Neil deGrasse Tyson, I feel, is like, oh, I'm operating out of, this is what is acceptable. I'm an acceptable Negro. White folk accept me. I'm in the clubs, and I don't want to ever not be in the clubs. I put maybe Henry Louis Gates, and like there's certain acceptable Negroes that can be in all of the rooms because they make white folk comfortable. Right. So he recently did an interview with a person, with an outlet that I find really disturbing, that we keep going to these outlets, making these outlets so much money. It just, and not that I don't, because he's been on my show a couple of times. Like, it's not that he doesn't come on this show. I'm just saying, why do we keep pouring into, anyway? I mean, it would all end if we just knew we had the power. That said, he said this. I would love to hear your response. Play.
The point is, the moment you say you're a Black person, I want to cast you as a Black person. I'm going to ask you Black people questions. You have ghettofied the interaction. If I'm a Black scientist to you, then I'm not actually a scientist to you.
Yeah.
You have
asterisk by your name. Yeah.
you have constrained who and what I can be in your mind by even assigning that label.
Thoughts and prayers, Dr. Black.
Please let me say something about this. Lord have mercy, oh God. The problem here is he sees the announcement of Blackness as an announcement of the limitation of who he is. That's why then if you're a Black scientist, you're not really a scientist. That is only true if Blackness for you is circumscribed as an announcement of your limitation. Someone can tell me I'm a Black writer and I say, yes, sir. Absolutely. Because Blackness for me is an announcement of the magnitude of my inheritance. And it is an announcement of the expanse of my intellectual possibility. So for you to say I am Black sets a crown of possibilities upon my head. That's what I hear when I hear the word Black. When folks say, oh my God, you're a Black man. Absolutely. There was never a time when I was human and I wasn't Black. Never a time. Even in the womb, I was Black. It does not announce my limitation. It announces the expanse and the depth of my divinity.
Did you always feel that way? Did you always feel that way though? Because you grew up in the South, Dr. Black. You grew up in the South, Dr. Black, notorious for anti-Black behavior among Black people.
That's right. I did not always think that at all. Because I grew up in the South, absolutely, and I grew up around people who, quite frankly, very much like Neil here, absolutely believed that Blackness was a limitation. Not until I went to graduate school, where I did a PhD in African American Studies, and we started talking about the paradigmatic possibilities of what it means to be African. Hey! In other words, when I connected Blackness to Africa, that's when I got free. The problem here is people are trying to plant the seed of Blackness as if it is a thing in and of itself, instead of picking Blackness from the tree of Africanity. Because see, the tree is humongous.
Which everybody has access to, because we all started there.
Absolutely. Everybody has access to it. We're trying to be Black without being African. And when you do that, it's going to always be a limitation. Why? Because when you're Black without being African, then for you, you're only Black because you met white. I'm Black because the African tree birthed every single possibility of every color conceivable.
To get here, right? And to have, as we're even talking on these airwaves, I've been accused of being racist because I talk so much about race. And I don't give it too much, back and forth unless it gets egregious, and then I have to, put some smoke out there. But it is, I can see how people could tune in who have lived their existence as white people in this world.
Yes.
And when they hear these kinds of conversations, feel like something is being done to them.
Yes.
In this moment.
Yes.
And as I'm working through this, I feel like this is where we are with America, right? Where the line of demarcation is Black and white. and there's a group of people rallying around this thing called whiteness because they feel like it's being taken from them, it's being watered down, it's being and this has been waves of it, because I remember in the 90s it was the CCC talking about the chocolate milk theory. Before that, was Birth of a Nation and all this miscegenation laws that came after that, right, for the fear of blackness entering into the gene pool as if it hasn't already been there, because we don't know our history, right? So this is like the frustration is we're having arguments with people who are ignorant, right? Who don't know anything and who are also angry, who also have numbers. Right. So it's a battle that we have to fight and chip away one at a time, which is why I will never shut up. But it has to be, I would love to have a conversation about, how many things I could talk about, not race related.
Absolutely.
And have fun talking about them.
Exactly.
This is the battleground right here, right? Absolutely. It's dismantling this thing that folk are so wedded to that is ruining all of society, right?
I run my fingers through her hair as she smiles and says that she loves me. Isn't it lovely when the one you love's